Most of us go through life assuming that our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors are ours, that we came to them through reason, experience, or personal growth. But the hard truth is that a significant portion of who we are wasn't consciously chosen. It was absorbed. It was modeled. It was conditioned into us without permission. This is what brainwashing looks like in the real world. It's not dramatic or obvious. It's subtle. It's slow. It's silent. And it starts when we're too young to notice. Think about it. From the moment you were born, you were placed in an environment filled with messages. Some loud, many quiet, that told you who you are, what you're worth, and how the world works. Your parents, your teachers, your culture, your religion, your media, all of them planted seeds. Some of those seeds were empowering, but many were not. And what happens over time is that you internalize those messages and they become the script that runs your life. You don't choose your first beliefs. They're given to you. And most people never go back to question them. If you were taught that money is bad, you'll likely struggle financially. If you were taught that your voice doesn't matter, you'll stay quiet when you should speak up. If you were taught that failure is shameful, you'll play it safe and avoid growth. The tragedy is not just that these beliefs limit us. It's that we don't even realize they are beliefs. We think they're facts. The way the brain works makes this worse. Your brain is wired to seek efficiency. It automates thoughts and behaviors so you don't have to think about them all the time. This is useful when you're brushing your teeth or driving to work. But it becomes a problem when the thoughts that are on autopilot are toxic, disempowering, or simply outdated. When we operate unconsciously, we're not living our lives. We're replaying someone else's program. We say the same things. We react the same way. We repeat the same patterns in relationships, in finances, in self-image, all without stopping to ask, is this even true for me anymore? This is why awareness is the first step to freedom. You cannot change what you do not see. And you will not see what you are not willing to question. The moment you become curious about your beliefs, truly curious, you unlock the door to transformation. When you start to observe your thoughts instead of automatically believing them, you become the watcher of your mind instead of the prisoner of it. Let's take an example. Imagine you catch yourself thinking, I'm not good enough. Now, most people would just accept that thought and move on. But a person who's becoming aware would pause and ask, where did I learn that? Who told me that? When did I start believing that? Is that actually true or just familiar? That moment of inquiry is the crack in the wall. It creates space between the thought and your identity. And in that space, you can choose a new response. Awareness is not always comfortable. In fact, it can be deeply unsettling. It forces you to confront how much of your life has been lived on autopilot. But that discomfort is sacred. It's the beginning of growth. When you realize you've been unconsciously carrying beliefs that don't serve you, you also realize you have the power to release them. It's important to understand this isn't about blaming your past. It's not about criticizing your parents, your culture, or your education. It's about reclaiming your agency. It's about waking up. The goal is not to tear everything down. The goal is to build a foundation that you consciously choose. That begins with awareness. Awareness allows you to see the filters you've been wearing. It reveals how your childhood, your environment, and your daily routines are constantly shaping your thoughts. It shows you how fear, shame, comparison, and self-doubt aren't just emotions. They're often inherited patterns. And once you see those patterns clearly, you can do something revolutionary: interrupt them. When you become aware, you create choice. And choice is the opposite of brainwashing. The most powerful people in the world aren't those who've never been programmed. They're the ones who've learned to question their programming. They've learned to pause, reflect, and rewrite. And so can you. But it begins by paying attention, by noticing what you say to yourself, by observing your reactions, by getting curious instead of reactive. Awareness isn't flashy. It's not loud. But it's the most transformative force you have. Because the moment you start observing your mind instead of being run by it, that's the moment you start living your life on your terms. Your brain isn't wired for truth. It's wired for survival. And to survive, it doesn't prioritize what's accurate or logical. It prioritizes what's familiar, what it sees over and over again, what it hears repeatedly. This is the very reason why repetition is the most powerful form of brainwashing. Not facts, not logic, not even direct experience, just repetition. From a young age, your brain starts forming beliefs based not on deep investigation or critical thinking, but on what's consistently shown or told to you. If a message is repeated enough, your brain starts to accept it as true, whether or not it makes sense. This is how cultural conditioning works. This is how advertising works. This is how fear spreads. And most dangerously, this is how your self-image is shaped. Let's break it down. If you're constantly exposed to messages through media, parents, school, or society that suggest you're not smart enough, attractive enough, or capable enough, those messages don't just bounce off you. They sink in. Not because they're true, but because they're familiar. The brain learns through exposure. If it sees or hears something often enough, it labels it as safe, and eventually as true. This is why people stay in toxic relationships, why they settle for jobs they hate, why they talk themselves out of big dreams. Not because they enjoy pain or lack ambition, but because deep down, they've been conditioned to believe this is what they deserve. And remember, these beliefs aren't usually chosen. They're absorbed. Here's a hard truth. Many of your core beliefs, the ones that run your daily thoughts, emotions, and decisions, were implanted by repetition, not reality. You may have believed them for years, but never actually questioned their origin. You assume that because you've always thought a certain way, it must be valid. But consistency doesn't equal truth. Repetition doesn't equal reality. Take advertising as an example. You don't buy a product just because you see it once. You buy it after seeing it over and over again. On TV, on social media, in conversations, it becomes familiar. You begin to associate it with quality, success, or happiness, not because you've tested it, but because your brain feels safe around it. The same mechanism applies to your internal programming. If you keep telling yourself, "I'm not good at this," eventually it becomes part of your identity, even if it's completely false. This is also why breaking habits, especially mental ones, is so difficult. You're not just fighting behavior. You're fighting the repetition that created the belief behind the behavior. Let's say you procrastinate because deep down you believe you're going to fail. That belief probably wasn't created from one bad experience. It was formed from a series of moments where you were told you weren't good enough, or you saw others treated like failures when they tried something and fell short. Those repeated patterns taught your brain that trying tech danger, so your brain now delays action as a way of protecting you. But protection doesn't mean progress. And what protected you once might be limiting you now. You need to understand that repetition is a programming tool. And you can use it against yourself, or you can use it for yourself. The good news: your brain doesn't care whether the repetition is negative or positive. It just records what it sees most often. So if you begin to consciously repeat empowering thoughts, uplifting messages, and new beliefs over time, your brain will start to treat those as familiar too. And eventually, it will accept them as truth. This is how affirmations work. Not because they're magical words, but because they harness the power of repetition. When you tell yourself, I am confident, I am capable, I am worthy, you're not lying to yourself, you're reprogramming yourself. You're fighting the years of negative repetition with intentional, positive repetition. The mistake people make is thinking that one pep talk or one journal session will change a lifetime of programming. It won't. Your brain is like a muscle, and it takes consistent training to reshape it. You have to be relentless. You have to feed it the thoughts you want it to believe, not just once, but again and again, because the world is not going to stop feeding you limiting messages. You have to repeat the noise. So if you've been feeling stuck, ask yourself, what thoughts have I been repeating? What beliefs do I keep reinforcing with my actions, my words, and my focus? What messages have I allowed to loop in my mind without questioning them? When you understand that your brain believes what it sees most, not what's most true, you start to take ownership. You begin to filter what you consume. You stop letting repetition shape you blindly and start using it with intention. You are not a slave to your past thoughts. You're simply a product of what has been repeated. And if you want to change your life, you start by changing the loop. You are not stuck with the thoughts you think, the beliefs you've been taught, or the patterns you repeat. No matter how long you've been running the same script in your mind, it is possible to change it. But here's the catch: it doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by wishing. It happens by intention. If you want to rewire your mind, you have to do it on purpose every single day. Most people don't realize that their brain is constantly rewiring itself. This process is called neuroplasticity. It means your brain has the ability to form new neural pathways based on what you focus on and what you practice. In simple terms, your brain learns by doing, and whatever you do often becomes your default. If you constantly repeat a certain thought, I'm not good enough, I always mess things up, people can't be trusted, your brain builds a strong neural connection around that idea. It becomes your automatic response, your go to reaction. But here's the empowering part. The same way you built those old patterns, you can build new ones. Think of your mind like a trail in a forest. If you keep walking the same path, that trail becomes clear and easy to walk. That's your habit. That's your brain's preferred route. But if you start walking a new path, even if it's overgrown and hard at first, and you keep at it every day, eventually that new path becomes clearer. The old one starts to fade. The mistake many people make is thinking change needs to be huge or dramatic. But that's not how the brain works. Your brain doesn't respond to intensity. It responds to consistency. It's the small, repetitive actions that create real rewiring. One powerful thought repeated daily can change your life more than 100 scattered thoughts once in a while. So how do you begin? Start by identifying the thoughts that don't serve you. Become aware of the beliefs that hold you back. Write them down. Challenge them. Ask yourself, where did I learn this? Is this even true? Is there another way to look at this? Then, and this part is crucial, choose a new belief to replace it with. You can't just remove a thought and leave a blank space. The mind hates a vacuum. You have to replace the old with something new, something empowering. Not something fake or fluffy, but something intentional and believable. For example, instead of, I'm not good enough, you might say, I am learning to value myself. Instead of, I always fail. Say, every mistake helps me grow. At first, these new thoughts will feel awkward or even untrue. That's okay. It's not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. You must repeat them out loud in writing, in your mind, when you wake up, before you sleep. Every time the old thought pops up, bring in the new one. This is how you rewire. This is how you take back control of your mental patterns. Environment matters too. If you're trying to build a new mindset, but you're surrounded by negativity, doubt, or distraction, you're fighting an uphill battle. You have to feed your mind what you want it to become. Listen to things that uplift you. Read things that challenge you. Spend time with people who speak life into you, not people who drain your energy or reinforce your old story. This also means paying attention to your self-talk throughout the day. Are you criticizing yourself more than encouraging yourself? Are you focusing on what you lack instead of what you're building? These little daily thoughts are what shape your identity over time. Be intentional with them. Journaling, visualization, affirmations, even posture and breath work. All of these are tools that, when used consistently, can help rewrite the story in your mind. None of them are magic, but combined with intention and repetition, they become powerful levers for lasting change. And don't expect instant results. That's not how real rewiring works. You've had years, maybe decades, of living by one script. Give yourself time and grace as you build a new one. Some days you'll fall back into old patterns. That's okay. What matters is that you notice it and course correct. Every time you do that, you reinforce the new wiring. You don't have to believe everything you think. You don't have to carry beliefs that were handed to you without question. You can rewire your mind, but only if you decide to. Only if you commit to showing up for yourself with intention over and over again. This is how you take your power back. This is how you stop being a product of your past and start creating a future that aligns with who you truly are. It's not easy, but it's worth it, because nothing is more powerful than a mind that's been trained to believe in itself on purpose. Thank you! If you need help turning this into a full speech script or want a summary, visual slide points, or even a